The day Earth's warship entered the Zanari system, the galaxy seemed to stop breathing. The Galactic Union had long regarded humanity as little more than a curiosity, an obscure species from the Sol system, barely tolerated at the Interstellar Council. To them, humans were irrelevant, fit only for mercenary work, manual labor, or petty trade. Never true players. Never a threat. That illusion shattered when the behemoth arrived. The battleship bore no resemblance to the refined, graceful cruisers of the ELV, nor did it echo the organic, flowing style of the Zith. No, the behemoth was forged in raw brutality, jagged lines, armored plates layered thick, and weapon emplacements jutting from every angle. It projected dominance, not elegance. And it did not come alone. Flanking it were two escorts, the Revenant and the Titan's Fist, each just as menacing. More fearsome than any vessel the Union had ever witnessed, they came as Earth's answer to the slaughter at Proxima Centauri. The Drath Collective, an insectoid empire commanding half the known galaxy, had made a disastrous miscalculation. They annihilated a human colony, expecting Earth to kneel like countless others had before. The Drath assumed humanity would plead for leniency. What they received instead was the behemoth. Union diplomats panicked, sending desperate communiques to allies, urging them to brace for the storm. The Drath only sneered. To them, humans were vermin, a nuisance at best. They assembled their armadas, confident they would crush whatever Earth dared unleash. Then the behemoth fired. Its opening salvo tore the Drath flagship apart in a heartbeat. Shields once thought unbreakable, tested in centuries of conquests, collapsed like fragile glass before humanity's guns. The Union could only watch in dread as humanity unveiled what no one believed they possessed: absolute technological dominance. Plasma lances carved through hulls, while kinetic projectiles the size of skyscrapers ripped enemy formations asunder, as if they were nothing more than fragile crystal. Railguns hurled slugs at near-light velocity, obliterating entire armadas before a single counterstrike could land. The Drath shrieked for reinforcements, dispatching hundreds of warships to stem the human advance. It was useless. For centuries, Earth had been dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. All the while, humanity had been watching, dissecting galactic technologies, cataloging their flaws. And when the hour finally arrived, they did not merely catch up, they leapt ahead, surpassing every great power in one merciless instant. Panic rippled through the Galactic Union. If humanity could annihilate the Drath so completely, what might they unleash on everyone else? Then came the behemoth's closing transmission, a message carried to every world under Union control. Earth does not forget. Earth does not forgive. Stay out of our way. And with those words, the stars themselves seemed to recoil. The galaxy trembled, cowed into silence, as the shattered husks of the Drath fleet drifted in the void. The wreckage of the Drath fleet still hung in the void, glowing fragments of broken warships scattering dim light across the endless stars. The clash had lasted less than an hour, yet its consequences would echo for centuries. In the chamber of the Galactic Union's High Council, a gathering of the most influential species in known space, silence reigned. On the vast holoscreen, at the chamber's core, the behemoth's assault replayed in brutal clarity. None among them had foreseen this. Ambassador Jar of the Elver, a silver-skinned diplomat whose people had steered galactic politics for millennia, was first to break the quiet. "We have erred," he confessed, his practiced serenity giving way to unease. "Humanity is not what we believed." The insectoid Cathuri delegate clattered its mandibles in alarm. They annihilated an entire battle group. The Drath fielded nearly 100 warships, and the humans only 3. Cut in Grand Marshal Sorak of the Thales, his feline visage drawn taut. 3 was enough. The council chamber stilled once more. For ages, humanity's fleets had been dismissed as antiquated, fragile, hardly worth mention. And yet now, they stood unrivaled, sovereign over the wreckage of giants. Of one of the most dreaded empires in the galaxy. But it was not the victory alone that unsettled the council, it was how they fought. Where other civilizations had long abandoned kinetic arsenals for refined energy warfare, the humans had mastered both. Their warships unleashed slugs of hyperdense alloy at near-light velocity, ripping through barriers thought unbreakable. They didn't merely cripple their foes, they obliterated them, leaving only drifting ruins in moments. "They did not come to bargain," whispered the Zith envoy, its gelatinous body shivering with unease. "They did not demand tribute, nor even announce hostilities." "No," Jar admitted grimly, his silver eyes narrowing. "They came for retribution." At that instant, a fresh transmission arrived. The High Command braced for ultimatums, perhaps even conquest. Instead, what came through was a cold, measured decree. "We will not wage war upon the Union. We will not cross beyond our own borders. But should any hand reach toward another human world, your fleets will suffer the fate of the Drath." Silence gripped the chamber as the feed cut abruptly. The meaning was undeniable. Humanity claimed no empire, demanded no tribute, sought no treaties. They had come only to make their point, and they had carved it deep into galactic memory. Now every council chamber whispered the same fearsome question. What if the humans someday want more? The Drath Collective was broken. Their fortress homeworld, once alive with ceaseless swarms, now lay in dreadful quiet. Not because Earth had raised it, no, Behemoth had left Drath Prime standing. But the warning had landed sharper than fire. The Drath were terrified of an empire with no hunger for conquest, one that struck only when provoked, and when it struck, nothing remained. The Elvery Confederation, once loud critics of humanity, quietly pulled their patrols back from human borders. The Kari, infamous for enslaving human captives, suddenly abolished every forced labor program. The Zith, proud champions of neutrality, refused to comment at all. Even the Union's ruling council, normally swift to impose sanctions and dictate galactic policy, remained paralyzed. Because deep down, they all recognized the truth. If humanity chose to wage war, nothing could stop them. Silence followed Earth's display, spreading like a shadow through the stars. No empire dared to challenge them, and for the first time in galactic history, one force had become untouchable. Even the most hardened militaries, those that once mocked the idea of human supremacy, now whispered the Behemoth's name in fear. But while the galaxy cowered, Earth was anything but idle. In the Sol system, hidden behind Jupiter's shadow, humanity's true command convened inside a classified orbital citadel. Unlike the panic-stricken councils of the Union, the figures at the war table radiated calm. They had foreseen this outcome. Admiral Jonathan Hayes, architect of humanity's war doctrine, leaned forward. His voice was level, yet carried the weight of inevitability. "The Union is afraid," he said simply, steel-gray eyes sweeping the chamber. That was the point. Around him sat generals, scientists, strategists, the minds behind Earth's ascendancy. No one celebrated. There were no toasts, no boasts of triumph. Humanity had won a battle, but their true war had only begun. A woman with sharp features and a data slate cleared her throat. "The Drath are broken. Their economy collapses within months. Smaller factions already divide their carcass." Hayes nodded. "Expected. Show weakness out here, and the vultures descend." A younger officer, dark-skinned with a cybernetic eye, spoke next. "The Union hasn't moved, but we intercepted transmissions between the Elver and Zith. They're running war games against us." He paused, uneasy. "None of their simulations show them winning." A smirk tugged at Hayes's lips. A grim chuckle rippled across the table, not joy, but recognition. Soldiers acknowledging a truth too heavy for celebration. Hayes leaned back, fingers interlaced. "Then we proceed as planned." The woman across from him narrowed her eyes. "You think they'll still test us?" "They always do," he said. "Fear doesn't last forever. Eventually someone will get brave. They'll think we got lucky against the Drath, that we don't have the numbers to fight." A prolonged war that they can unite against us, and when they do, Hayes' smirk faded. His voice was cold certain, we remind them why the galaxy should be afraid. The room fell silent. There was no bloodlust in their expressions, no cruelty in their words. But there was certainty. The galaxy had made the mistake of underestimating humanity. On Sethi wouldn't get a second chance. The days following the destruction of the draft fleet sent ripples through the galactic community. Every major empire, every ruling council, and every warlord in the known systems was left with the same thought: what have we done for centuries? Humanity had been treated as little more than an afterthought, a species confined to its small sector off space, scrapping for resources, barely keeping up with the great powers of the universe. They had been useful, sure, hired as mercenaries, traders, explorers, but no one had ever truly feared them, not until now, and yet fear alone was not enough to keep the galaxy at bay forever. Admiral Jonathan Hayes knew this better than anyone sitting in the command center of Earth's secretive Black Station. He watched as dozens of intelligence reports scrolled past his screen. The Galactic Union was rattled, but rattled did not mean defeated. It meant they were thinking, it meant they were planning, and eventually it meant they would act the war against. The draft had not been a war, it had been an exec. Asterisk predictable, it had been inevitable. Fear was a powerful motivator, but it only lasted so long. Eventually paranoia set in. The Union knew they couldn't allow humanity to exist as an unchecked power. They would try to find weakness as develop counter measures, and when they believed they were ready, they would strike. They would do exactly what Haishad predicted. Any indication they're planning to move on us soon? He asked. Carter shook her head. Not yet, right now, they're just preparing, but the fact that Alvari and Zith are working together, that's unprecedented. It means they're as serious. Hayes stared at the galactic map hovering in front of them. Red marker shy gliding known fleet movements. He could already see the pieces shifting into place. The Union wanted a war. They just didn't realize they had already lost. He turned to Carter. Activate Ghost Fleet Protocol. He went silent. Incursions into their systems. No attacks, no engagements. Just surveillance. We're going to know everything before they make their move. She nodded. I'll have the Fee stealth ships deployed immediately. Hayes clasped his hands behind his back. And bring the Behemoth to the Kepler defense line. No direct confrontations, but I want them to see it. Let them know it's waiting for them. Carter smirked. You want them to hesitate? I want them to understand. Hayes corrected. Before they even think about war, they need to feel the weight of what they're reconsidering. He leaned in, his voice quiet but firm. Because when we strike, it won't be war. His eyes cold as the void methers. It'll be an extinction across the galaxy, in the heart of the Ilari. Confederation High Chancellor Orland sat in his private chamber, watching the latest intelligence reps with growing unease. The footage showed a lone battleship, a human warship, floating along the border of Union space. The Behemoth. It hadn't moved, it hadn't fired a shot, but it was there like a predator watching its prey. Orland turned to his military advisors. Tell me, he said carefully, do we have any weapon capable of matching that ship? Silence. The gathered officers exchanged nervous glances, none wanting to be the first to speak. Finally, out in 10th, Admiral cleared his throat. No, he admitted when Orland felt a chill run down his spine. He had hoped for a different answer, hoped in vain, because no matter how much they trained, no matter how many ships they built, the truth remained: humanity was already at war with them. The Union just hadn't realized it yet. The moment the Behemoth appeared along the Kepler defense line, the Galactic Union froze. Messages flooded through encrypted channels. High-ranking officials whispered in darkened chambers, and military analysts scrambled to determine what it meant. The battleship had not crossed into Union space. It had not fired a shot. It simply existed, and yet that alone was enough to bring the galaxy to the brink of panic in the Alvari. High Council Chancellor Orland stood before a holographic display, his locked on the Viga. Massive warship floating in the void, even from millions of kilometers away. Its presence was suffocating. An aide leaned in, voice hushed with barely concealed terror. Zero forces remain on high alert. We've positioned 3 fleets along the sector border. But he hesitated. But what? Orland snapped. The aide swallowed hard. We have no idea what's Inside that ship we don't even know the extent of human technology. That was the problem, wasn't it? Humanity had revealed only what they wanted the galaxy to see. They had unleashed the behemoth against the Drathis. But what if that was just a distraction? What if their true weapons, their true warships were hidden somewhere, beyond the reaches of known space, waiting for the right moment to strike? Orland turned to his military advisors. Tell me we have some countermeasure. A Zith strategist clicked his mandibles. We've been running combat simulations against the behemoth. Every scenario ends in catastrophic loss. The room fell in tussles. Orland clenched his fists. He had been prepared for war, but not this kind of war, not one where his people were already outmatched before the first shot was even fired. We cannot allow ourselves to be paralyzed by fear, he said finally. The humans have power. Yes, but they do not rule us. If they think they can intimidate the Union into submission, they are mistaken. One of the Alvari generals stepped forward. Do you propose an attack? Chancellor Orland hesitated. That was the question, wasn't it? Strike first, or wait for the inevitable. Either choice carried its own kind of death sentence. No, he said at last, not yet, but we'll prepare across the galaxy. Preparations for war began. Meanwhile, aboard the behemoth, Admiral Jonathan Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the distant Union fleets through the viewport. They were a gathering like insects, their ships tiny specks in the darkness, bristling with weapons, yet afraid to come closer. Good. Commander Elise Carter approached him, datapad in hand. Union forces are holding position. No aggressive movements. They afraid, Hayes said simply. She hesitated. But fear won't last forever. No, he admitted it won't. That was why Ghost Fleet protocol had already begun, scattered throughout the Union's territories unseen by their sensors. Humanity's true power was already at work. Advanced stealth ships cloaked beyond detection were infill in their systems, listening, watching, mapping out every weakness. The moment the Union made their move, they wouldn't be fighting the behemoth. They wouldn't even be fighting the full force of Earth's fleet. They would be fighting an enemy that already knew their plans, an enemy that had already won. Hayes turned to Carter. Deploy the next phase. The Union thinks they still have a chance. A slow smile crossed his facelets. Show them how wrong they are. In the cold depths of space, where light barely reached and silence reigned, Ghost Fleet protocol was in motion. No one in the Galactic Union saw them. No sensors detected their approach. No alarm sounded as humanity's hidden fleet moved like shadows through the void. They were not here to attack, not yet. They were here to prepare the battlefield before the war even began. Aboard the Union's Central Defense Station, Xerxes Prime High, Chancellor Orland sat in his war room, surrounded by his top generals and admirals. A massive holographic display flickered before them, outlining known human fleet movements, or at least what they thought were human fleet movements. The behemoth Wrens stationed near Kepler, an Alvari strategist, reported additional human warships have been detected at their core systems, but there's no indication of a full mobilization. The Zith Admiral, his mandibles clicking in agitation, turgicdic, and that is precisely what concerns me. We have no evidence of Agran fleet, no proof that they have more ships of the behemoth's caliber. What if they must have more? Orland interrupted, his voice cold. No empire places its strongest asset on the front line without reinforcement. The fact that we haven't seen them only means one thing. Silence filled the war room. Finally an Alvari officer spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. They're already here. The words hung in the air like a death sentence because it was the only explanation that made sense. Humanity had revealed its battleship, but the true war was being fought in the shadows deep inside Zith Dominion space. A Union-controlled refueling station floated in the darkness, supplying ships along the major trade routes. Its defenses were standard enough to deter pirates, but not built to withstand a true assault. It didn't need to be. The Union was at peace, or at least that's what they thought, and seen by every watchful eye a human stealth ship hung in the void. Complete Lysland, its hull was coated in experimental materials that absorbed sensor waves, rendering it invisible to Toskans. It did not approach, it did not attack, it simply listened inside the vessel. Lieutenant Marcus Hall watched as streams of intercepted transmissions scrolled across his screen, messages from Union warships, encrypted orders from military command, fleet deployment supply routes. They weren't just gathering intelligence, they were rewriting the war. Before it began, a soft chime echoed through the bridge. The data extraction was complete. Hall turned to his team. Send the package to Black Station. Let High Command know where to strike. The information surged through encrypted channels, traveling undetected through the vast galactic network. Within hours, Earth's top strategists would know the location of every major fuel depot, supply station, and weak point in the Union's infrastructure. By the time the Union fired its first shot, they would already bleeding out. Back on the behemoth, Admiral Hayes stood on the command deck reading fellatist intelligence reports from Ghost Fleet. His officers awaited his orders, but they already knew what was coming. It's time, Hayes said, his voice calm. Send the next message to this Union Commander Carter nodded, transmitting a simple, untraceable signal across all Union channels, a message that needed no explanation. We are already inside your walls. And with that, humanity's war had already begun. Panic spread like wildfire through the Galactic Union. The message, simple, chilling, had been broadcast across every secure military channel. We are already inside your walls. No one knew where it came from. No transmission logs, no traceable source. It had simply appeared as if humanity itself had whispered it into their ears. Chancellor Orlan stood in his private chamber, staring at the words repeating on his hollow screen. His claws twitched in agitation. What does this mean? He demanded. A Union intelligence officer, his Ilari skin paler than usual, swallowed hard. It means, Chancellor, they're already here. Orlan's blood ran cold. How could they have infiltrated US so quickly? The officer shook his head. Wouldn't know. There have been no confirmed intrusions, no breaches in our security systems, no sign of human fleets inside or borders. And yet the message was cleared. Humans wanted them to know somewhere, somehow they had slipped past the Union's defenses. They weren't attacking, they weren't negotiating, they were simply waiting. It was psychological warfare at its purest. The worst part, it was working aboard the behemoth. Admiral Jonathan Hayes stood on the bridge, watching the incoming data streams from Ghost Fleet. Their silent incursions had gone undetected. Every major refueling station, supply line, and fleet deployment was now logged in Earth's war database. They knew writhing Commander Carter approached. Union forces are scrambling, fire fleets are repositioning defensively, but it's chaotic. They don't know where we'll strike. Hayes nodded. Good. They're scared, Carter continued, but fear only buys us time. Eventually I'll take action. Hayes glanced at the galactic map hovering before him. The Union forceware spread thin. They had no central rallying point, no single command hub that could withstand a full-scale engagement. If war came, they would shatter like glass under a hammer, but that was not the plan. Not yet. They'll come to us first. Hayes said, that's the nature of frightened empires. They don't attack immediately. They probe, they test boundaries, send spies, maybe even a small fleet to gauge our response. Carter frowned. You're suggesting they'll poke the bear? They don't think we're a bear, Commander. Hayes said with a small smirk. They think we're a sleeping Janthale. Try to wound us first, see if we react. Carter's eyes darkened, and when they do, Ha's voice was steel. We won't react, we'll end them before they understand what's happening. He turned back to the display play. But first we let them think they have control, give them space to breathe. Let them believe they're making the right moves. Carter exhaled slowly. We're playing the long game. Hayes nodded, and when the time comes, his eyes gleamed like a predator waiting for the kill. We take everything from them. The Galactic Union was unraveling. In the weeks following humanity's message, we are already inside your walls. The once mighty alliance of empires had begun to fracture. Fear gripped their leaders. Paranoia spread like an infection. No one trusted their own security. No one knew where the humans were hiding, or if they had already infiltrated the highest levels of their governments. The worst part, there was not proof of any actual infiltration. No human agents had been caught. No D-breaches had been detected. No sabotage had occurred. And yet they all believed it had. The Zith Dominion purged hundreds of suspected human spies, only to realize too late that they had executed their own Intelligence officers, the Alvari Confederation, impose strict security measures, limiting interstellar travel and tightening border controls, suffocating their own economy in the process. The Union was tearing itself apart, and Admiral Jonathan Hayes watched it all unfold from the bridge of the Behemoth, inside the Alvari High Council chamber. Chancellor Orlan sat at the head of a long gleaming table. His advisors gathered before him. The room was dimly lit, an unspoken acknowledgement of their desperation. The once proud leaders of Union now whispered like hunted prey, "We must act, an Alari general said. "We cannot live under the shadow of humanity forever." "Agreed," growled a Zith Admiralis, mandibles twitching. "We strike now before they strike us. Do we even know where to strike?" An intelligence officer countered. "For all we know, they want us to attack. They could be leading us into a trap." Orlan exhaled sharply. He had ruled over the Union for decades, but never had he felt this powerless. "They have made no official demands," he said. "They have not declared war. They have not expanded their borders. They have done nothing except wait." The silence in the room was suffocating. That was what terrified them the most. If the humans had invaded, Union could have fought back. If they had made demands, negotiations could have begun. But humanity had done neither. They had simply existed, and the Union was losing because of it. Orlan clenched his fists. "We need to reclaim control of the situation. We will force humanity." Shan, the Zith general, leaned forward. "You mean provoke them? I mean test them." Orlan corrected. "Send a fleet to the Kepler defense line. A show of force, not an attack. Just enough to see how the humans respond, and if they respond with the Behemoth," someone asked. Oran's expression was grim. "Then at least we'll know how they intend to play this war." Meanwhile, aboard the Behemoth, "They're coming." Commander Elise Carter placed a datapad on the command table showing latest movement of Union forces. A fleet of nearly 200 warships had begun mobilizing towards the Kepler defense line. Admiral Hayes studied the data. "Insolence, they won't attack," he said finally. "Not yet. This is a test." Carter nodded. "They want to see if we'll back down." A slow smirk crossed Hayes' face. "Then let's teach them what happens when you test humanity." He turned to his officers. "Deploy Project Revenant. Let them see what they should be afraid of." Carter's eyes widened slightly. "Are you sure we haven't revealed it?" Yet Hayes' voice was calm, certain. "It's time the Union learned that the Behemoth isn't the worst thing humanity has built." Hours later at the Kepler defense line, the Union fleet arrived. Information weapons powered, but not armed. An unmistakable show of force, and Thenthi saw a new ship larger than anything the galaxy had ever known. Amonstrous Abi's black warship, its hull absorbing light like a void in space. It made the Kothi Behemoth looked small. No records existed of its creation. No intelligence reports had ever mentioned its existence. It had never been seen before. The Union fleet, despite its numbers, hesitated, and then the ship spoke. "You were standing at the edge of your own destruction." The message rang across all channels. Cold and emotionless, the Union fleet, once so confident in their show of force, found themselves staring into the unknown, and for the first time they understood the truth. Humanity had never needed to fight them, because humanity had already won. The void of space had never felt so suffocating. The Union fleet, unseasonable as a proud show of strength, now drifted in eerie silence before the monstrous warship that had appeared before them. No records, no intelligence reps, no prior warnings. This was something new, something the humans had chosen to reveal at this very moment. The ship had no name displayed on its homo insignia, no visible energy output, and yet its presence alone was crushing. "You were standing at the edge of your own destruction." The voice was synthetic, almost lifeless, yet it carried a weight that pressed it into the minds of every Union officer. The message had been received loud and clear aboard the Union command ship Eternal Vigilance. Admiral VRA of the Alvari Confederation swallowed hard. His fingers hovered over the C panel, but he hesitated. He had been a soldier. 4 decades had fought wars against ruthless enemies, yet in this moment he felt like an insect staring into the jaws of a predator. "Orders." Admiral, one of his officers asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Vraz Mindrist, what was this thing before them?" "Another superweapon, a planet killer." The Behemoth had already been terrifying, but this was something else. Enterelian. Humanity had never mentioned it. They had kept this hidden until now. Veltra cleared his throat, forcing himself to regain composure. Open a channel. A brief chime confirmed the link. This is Admiral VRA of the Galactic Union. Identify yourself. Silence. Then the ship's voice returned, its synthetic tone cold and unfeeling. Your name is irrelevant. Your rank is meaningless. Your fleet is insufficient. Vraya's blood ran cold. This wasn't negotiation. This wasn't diplomacy. This was a warning, and it wasn't just directed at him. It was meant for everyone in the Union. Vraya's instincts screamed at him to retreat, to take his fleet and run, but he knew the consequences if he backed down now. The Union would lose all credibility. Humanity had already demonstrated power beyond comprehension. But the moment the Union admitted defeat, they would become nothing more than vassals under Earth's shadow. He had no choice. Hold position, VRA ordered. We are not here for war. Another moment of silence passed. 10th ship's voice returned. Then you should leave. The command was not shoot at it, was not accompanied by the charging of weapons or the movement of attack formations. It was simply stated as a fact, one that carried the weight of an unspoken threat. VRA clenched his fist, wanted to respond with defiance, to demand answers, to prove that the Union would not be cowed. But his sensors told a different story. There were no life signs aboard the warship, no heat signatures, no biological readings. This ship was not manned, which meant it was something else entirely. And the implications of that realization shook him to his core. Vra's officers awaited his orders, tension thick in the air. He could push forward, demand negotiations, perhaps even order a test strike to gauge the ship's defenses, but deep down he already knew how that would end. He took a slow breath. We fall back. A ripple of disbelief spread through the command deck, but no one voiced their objections. No one wanted to stay here. The fleet adjusted course, one by one. The ships turned away from the Kepler defense line, retreating without another word. Aboard the nameless human warship, Admiral Jonathan Hayes watched the Union forces disappear from the sensor display. He allowed himself asmo satisfied. Smirk. Phase 1 is complete. Commander Elise Carter said they took the bait. They were never going to fight, Hayes said, folding his arms. But now they know. Now they understand that the behemoth wasn't our greatest weapon. Carter nodded. What do we do next? Hayes turned his gaze back to the viewport, where to H.